Roche, you may begin.
Oh. A very good afternoon to every one of you all, our esteemed guests, presenters. Firstly, I must apologize for a slight delay in the commencement of this webinar, but nevertheless, we are here with you, and we hope that you will stay with us right until the end of this webinar. With that being said, I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the UKZN community to offer a very warm welcome to all of you and to thank you for taking time off to register and attend this critical webinar, which is on disability stigma and the possible barriers that it can pose to achieving a degree. So yes, once again, all the very best to our presenters. And from our student services division, we have received a lot of support from our disability unit, and thanks once again to all of you. This was our disability unit's disability seminar series. We did host one last week, which looked at the stigmas associated with alcoholism and HIV and gender-based violence. And we see it fit and proper to now host our last seminar series for 2024 on the all-important aspect of disability stigma. So, you know, one may even ask why why are we hosting such a series on stigma? So, you know, our justification shows that not much has been said on disability stigma. You know, the way forward for our practice as social workers, psychologists, is rather very vague because there hasn't been much open, democratic dialogues on the issue of disability stigma. Even if we look in terms of academic scholarship, we're still scratching the surface. There is still so much to be done academically, scholarly in the space of disability stigma. Furthermore, another rationale or justification for hosting a webinar of this nature, as in disability stigma, is that you know, I work at the disability unit here at the School of Education at UKZN. And when I look at my practice runs, I have seen the gap in terms of knowledge and what we need to impart to our students. So this is a very important topic. Please, may I apologize. I need to introduce myself as Dr. Roche O'Brien. I'm the disability coordinator at the disability unit at the School of Education based at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So thank you so much once again. We're looking forward to some robust and rich participation, and we hope that you'll take back home with you, take back to your practice, take back to your academic spaces, issues relevant to disability stigma in the space of the Bachelor of Education program, in the space of assistive devices, and of course, mental health. So we have three presenters, Mr. Gavin, Mrs. Gugunda Bezita, and myself. So now I wish to introduce to you Mr. Gavin. Actually, he presented last week at our webinar series, but we are so lucky and so privileged to have him with us once again. Mr. Gavin was involved in a motor vehicle accident, and that apparently changed his life forever. And emerging from that motor vehicle accident, he had to use crutches, and later on went into amputation, and he had to use a prosthetic limb to aid in his mobility. So, as Mr. Gavin rightfully pointed out, that having an amputation and using a prosthetic leg actually gave him freedom, and he's been free since then. So it's not all dull when you have to wear assistive devices to support your independence. And he's going to take us through his journey on the freedom that a prosthetic leg and other assistive devices has given him. I now hand you over to Mr. Gavin. Good luck and looking forward to a lovely presentation from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roche. Gavin, hallo. Voordat me jouself, kan ek vra dat jy so oor 'n uur bel asseblief? Ek's besig met 'n Zoom vergadering. Baie dankie. Goed. There we go. Right. Let's I had a motor vehicle accident in 2010 coming back from work, and I had the accident, and it was something like I've written here. In an instant, the world blew up and found myself existing in a world that I least expected to live. The motor vehicle accident was more than metal against glass. It was the event that rippled into every aspect of my life. I've been on crutches since then to be able to move around. The weeks that followed were a real eye-opener. Simple things I had taken for granted were becoming monumental challenges. Faced with dramatic reduction in the mobility, when struggles with crutches became only a way to get through the world or even a day. Things that I'd enjoyed doing and found pleasure in, like hiking, dancing, errands, reached a point beyond my grasp. The vivid life that I had lived was suddenly grayed, and limitations and a deep-seated feeling of vulnerability. I was not only healing from this physically, but I was also fighting frustration, anger, and loss. As I started my journey to the physical and emotional healing, I also realized the importance of I start my journey in the physical and emotional healing, also realizing the importance of advocacy. The accident opened my eyes to the glaring need for road safety, education, and awareness. I became passionate about sharing my story to hopefully inspire others to be more mindful and cautious on the road. In that pain, meaning was found by putting my experience to work for a bigger cause than myself. And the traumatic event became an opportunity for growth and education. The emotional repercussion after the accident showed its ways through unexpected means. Anxiety snaked into everyday activities because when I'm in a vehicle or near a busy road, over the next few months, I began to realize that this accident had changed not just my physical capabilities, but also my relationship and priorities. Friends who had been there for thick and thin started flowing away, perhaps because they did not know how to handle this new version of me. Some were sympathetic, others seemed ill at ease with my vulnerability. This transition made me reassess the people in my life and the relationships that were truly important. I learned to appreciate anyone who was there for me and who could not offer their support and empathy, but at the same time rely on myself during this period. I eventually realized that the leg I was dragging along was just hindering me. So I asked the surgeon to amputate. I waited a year and a half before I got my prosthetic leg, what made it difficult was the fact that I did not have a hip. So I had to use a cane to move around. At one stage, I did use a walker, but because it was limiting, like climbing stairs or going up and down inclines, it was difficult. But in any case, I used it for the time that I had it. And the frustration of being able to walk everywhere, I wanted to do something that I had to accept. Yes, I had to accept and make peace with. The other thing I had to accept was that I fell a lot. Getting up physically became difficult, especially at the end of the day when I was tired after moving around with whichever device I was using. For me to attend shows and exhibitions, I got a wheelchair where my friends would help and push me around. It just made things easier. And I didn't have to stay at home because I was unable to walk long distances. What can I also say is that strangers were willing to help too, something that I'm very grateful for. As I attempted my journey to physical and emotional healing, oh wait, I've said that already. The motor vehicle accident represented a watershed moment in my life, a moment which tore asunder the fabric of normalcy and trust into the stark reality just how fragile life could be. I would never be the same, but I emerged from there with a clearer purpose and an intensified appreciation for life's subtleties. The process of healing, grueling and never ending, started to make me realize that I wasn't about retrieving what I had lost, but embracing the new chapters of my life. This has allowed me to be able to find strength, resilience, and commitment to living a life to the fullest through difficulty, even into the introduction of profound life changes. I know that if I stop, there's going to be a lot more frustration in my life. The only way for me is to use my use any assistance or assistive devices to help me keep moving around. Now I can even, I even kept doing some of my hobbies like fishing and photography. I drive a car too. It's automatic, and the accelerator pedal has been extended to the left-hand side of the brake pedal. That was the only modification needed for me to be able to drive comfortably and safely. There we go. And I'm grateful for today and last week that I could speak about what's happened, and also that it's positive. And I'd like to thank Dr. Roche for the chance to be able to do this too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gavin, for that. That's very inspiring. I think you actually showed us, yes, there's no need to fall, there's no need to be labeled, because the devices actually contribute to not only physical freedom, but also mental freedom. And you've left us with messages of hope that you can live an independent life after a motor vehicle accident. Thank you very much for that. So now I'm going to move on to having a little discussion on the Bachelor of Education program and the kind of disability stigma that is experienced by students when they go on their teaching practice placements. So as I told you, that I'm the disability coordinator at the School of Education. And of critical importance is how our unit or department actually supports students with disability in the space of the theoretical framework or academic campus life, and also how we support them when they have to go on their, what we fondly and frequently say, teaching practice school placements. So some people will say practicum or in-service training, but here at the school, it's commonly referred to as the teaching practice school placements. So for the want of some understanding, I'm just going to use teaching practice school placements. So when I started my journey at the School of Education, I started off as a social worker. And social workers are very quick to, like other professionals, look at the sociological complexities in the day-to-day life of people. And one of the things that I actually saw was a lot of stigma moving around on campus, and that is why I even based last week's webinar on stigma. But more so, I found that students were coming back from their teaching practice very perturbed, some of them not wanting to persevere, some of the students not motivated enough to actually go back. And due to some deeper thinking and collaboration with the students from the disability unit, actually realized that one of the barriers came up as being disability stigma and not being in a position to negotiate that stigma in the context of the students' teaching practice school placement. So I thereafter started understanding this and went on to do a PhD to interrogate this phenomena and look at how we could transform our thinking, or what else we needed to know about this very painful construct called disability stigma. So I'm going to take you through very few slides, and I know it's not enough to do justice to the way we negotiate and navigate that terrain of disability stigma. So basically, I think we all know that, to have a stigmatized identity, you have certain markers. And devaluation, discrediting comes up. There has to be power hierarchies, or sometimes we hear the words damaged goods, spoiled identities, even notions of hopelessness, unworthy, incapable, powerless, and even, you'll find that society even viewing disability as disrespect, or even persons with disabilities being viewed as outsiders, or with negative stereotypes and labeling. So this is, I put together very few markers for what we may call a stigma identity. So I thought I'm just going to go through two definitions of stigma, so that we'll just, all of us can be on the same page as to the way stigma is defined. So if we have to go to the sociological definition of stigma, so Goffman in 1963 actually came up with the stigma theory, and what he said, that it's an attribute or a characteristic that is deeply discrediting, where a person gets devalued, or where it reduces the person from a whole person to a person that has a mark, or a person that is tainted, or a person that is discounted for. So it actually reduces a person to having a spoiled identity. So according to Goffman, stigma even means it's an imperfection to your individual character. But if we go on to look at the psychosocial definition of stigma, which is very widely used today, as with Goffman's sociological definition. So Link and Pilan, they say that when in the space of the psychosocial definition of stigma, they actually say it is when elements of labeling, negative stereotyping, negative attitudes, and discrimination, when it co-occurs in a situation of power where there is the stigmatized and the stigmatizer. And this is when this power situation allows us the processes of labeling, stereotyping, and discrimination to occur. Okay, so what we see permeating from these two definitions of stigma, two different definitions, is that there is the role of power between the stigmatizer and the one being stigmatized. And this often leads to violence, to discrimination, to abuse, and to isolation. Okay, so what gives rise to stigma? So I used Goffman's term of mixed context, and this is basically when able-bodied people and a person with a disability, they come together in the physical presence of each other. So this is when a power hierarchy develops, and you'll more often hear them and us, or superior, inferior, dominant, and subordinate. So as I said, this sets the scene for that kind of power hierarchy to develop. So in the space of a visible disability, where there is bodily difference, where your body looks different because of your disability, and where you cannot disguise your disability, you have no option but to accept inferiority, marginalization, and social exclusion, as long as you in this power play with able-bodied people. Again, I want to say you have no option as long as you in a power play with able-bodied people. So even with this visible disability, and what gives rise to stigma is the bodily difference that carries information. It's also called information pegs. So this identifiable condition is actually enough to trigger stigma. So some of the identifiable conditions would refer to gender, disability, infectious disease, sexual orientation. So this identifiable condition is actually controlled by the stigmatizer, and it creates a difference, a difference between the stigmatizer and the person being stigmatized. Why? Because you fall out of societal norms. So another concept that I want to briefly mention is the blending in strategy. Now, blending in, not in the space of giving rise to stigma, but to avoid stigma, where people would actually control information about their disability. Like, for example, a person who is hard of hearing may not want to wear the hearing aids because of the fear of how that piece of assistive device will control information about them and lead to stigmatization. So perhaps what this person will do is that they will have a hearing buddy and sit very closely to the hearing buddy so that the hearing buddy hears everything and can relay the communication to the person who is hard of hearing. So that is how people blend in to avoid stigma. However, coming back to stigma, stigma often leads to humiliation, again, labeling, negative attitudes, loss of confidence, and stereotyping. So even here in the space of higher education, studies have shown that mature age women with disabilities in higher education, and I've also seen it myself here with the students that we support at the disability unit, where mature age students with disabilities are actually interwoven into states of assuming subordination by much younger able-bodied students. And even this mature age and being a woman with a disability, when those things intersect, then one may have to look at the identity of the mature age woman and the disability in terms of how we're going to provide services to that cohort of person. There's also what we've seen here is stigma arising from specialized devices. And this even acts as a barrier to complete not only your degree, but to complete whatever you have to complete at that moment in time. Like, for example, if you're using voice synthesized software in a research space that caters for every student. So as we know, the JAWS program, if you're not using headphones, you know, it is a voice synthesized software. And then you get other students troubling the blind students. Even the use of white canes around campus, wheelchairs, and ventilators for persons with respiratory challenges. So these are just some of the issues or some of the markers or enablers that will give rise to stigma. So again, I want to come back on mixed contact, as in the case of a physical disability. And I just want to report on some voices from my participants and how they had actually endured stigma when they went for their teaching practice school placements. And this is what one participant had to say. Even when the learners describe you to other learners, the learners describe you with your disability. Another participant mentioned, my name is Leg. The learners see me as half a person and not a full person. And this, you know, we can go back to what Goffman said. You are reduced from a whole person. You are reduced. Okay, and this is exactly what this excerpt speaks about. The learners see me as half a person and not a full person, because there are so many things that I cannot do, like running. Another one, they provoke me. Hey, look at this teacher. Is this the man that is going to teach us? So these are information pigs or information carriers. And this is how information about the stigmatized person is carried, it's controlled, and it's managed, all because it's a visible disability. And this is clear enough for the development of power hierarchy. And what you even see in the voices of the participants is, there is an indication of labeling, negative attitudes, and categorization, leading to discrimination, marginalization, and social exclusion. But, in some scenarios, there's also a great chance that this can also lead to self-stigmatization. For example, it feels like you are different. You do not belong to that particular society or that particular group. It feels like someone is pointing fingers at you. It makes you lose confidence. So, sometimes we also have to think in the space of self-stigmatization, and that it's not always, able-bodied people instigating the development of the power hierarchy for stigma production. So, self-stigmatization is another topic for another day because of the vastness of what is out there and the complexities that's contained in self-stigmatization. So even here too, in mixed contexts, in the case of visible disabilities, learners want to make a comedy show out of you. Sometimes they will close their own eyes and walk into the classroom. This is very rude. My right eye squints, and the learners will say, "Shut up, you with the squint eye." So this actually reinforces feelings of devaluation. It's dehumanizing, and it reinforces feelings of not being capable, not being worth it, and it just devalues the person's humanhood. Okay. So I did very briefly mention blending in strategy, but I want to speak about it in the space of a hidden visual disability. We all know that not all visual disabilities it's observable or is visible. So with some visual disabilities, we refer to it as hidden or non-visible visual disabilities. So listen to this. I realized that there would be a challenge with me using the chalkboard. So I made copies and hand the copies to the learners. So as I teach, they would read what is written on the copies. I have a large print copy. So what we find here, even in our practice arrangements at the department, is that when the disability is hidden, there is a likelihood of the student not disclosing their disability. And that is a major challenge for the student, because as it goes along, it will find that, especially when he goes for his teaching practice and has to negotiate the use of the chalkboard, he would find that, he or she would find that it's just not working out. I cannot cope. And I've had students who have dropped out of campus rather than coming to the disability unit for support and specialized services in the context of their teaching practice school placement. So disclosure is a major issue, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done with regard to disability disclosure versus non-disclosure. So when you blend in your disability, it makes you look like an able-bodied person. And this makes the case for an ableist identity. And this is a very sad or very painful moment where you have to assume an ableist identity just so that you can be accepted, you can be included, and you can find a space or a sense of belonging into a specific social grouping. So blending in strategy, it's not the greatest thing to do, because we must belong to a society that is accepting of persons with disabilities. But even there too, we have a lot of work to go in terms of advocating and educating society to understand disability and what they can do to make it surely a human rights issue and a social justice issue for zero tolerance towards discrimination. So when you blend in, studies have suggested that you do not feel different, you feel included, you're not ranked on the superior ladder of the, not superior, you're not ranked or placed rather on the inferior step of the power hierarchy. So in this way, you blend in so that you reduce or you minimize the possibility of stigma production. So here, this is what one participant had to say. So when I write on the chalkboard, learners would say, "Where are you going to with the chalk, ma'am?" Because when you start on this side, then you end up going right on the top. So you see, this is what happens when you have a hidden visual disability. And as I mentioned, this is what happens when our students from here go on the teaching practice placement, and they don't disclose and don't show up for the necessary support that the unit can provide. And then learners laugh at you when you say, start here and you'll end up there. You cannot write straight. What kind of a teacher are you? You cannot even write on the chalkboard. So emerging from this, persons with visual disabilities, they navigate resources designed for sighted people. And when they navigate these resources, that's when the stigma is produced, because these resources are designed for sighted people, as in the chalkboard, in the school placement. So even what we can see here, these resources that's designed for sighted people, it's an exclusionary force, because persons with visual disabilities cannot readily access or navigate these resources. And that's when you get ridicule, laughter, and labeling from the learners in the school context. So stigma enablers as a barrier to the achievement of access, participation, and success in the teaching practice school placement, which is a core component of the Bachelor of Education program. So these are the other enablers: assistive devices, perhaps as in wheelchairs, or the use of a crutch, or the use of therapeutic shoes and calipers. So these carry information, or they are information pegs, and you carry this through with you to the teaching practice school placement. So again, I'm going to come back to bodily difference. It's an enabler to stigma production. The resources again, and also our learners in the school placement, there's clear evidence that they are not conscientized enough or made aware of issues relevant to people with disabilities. So I just want to come down to some possible interventions that or findings from my research and what I use in the space of my work with the Bachelor of Education students. So disability disclosure is actually a strategy to prevent the development of power hierarchies and hence reduce or eliminate stigma. So here are the goals. During my teaching practice, it is first things first. I will tell the learners about my left arm and my amputation, and the learners will become aware if I tell them about my disability. So we actually call the issue of disability disclosure in your teaching practice first things first. So, when we mention, or I mention first things first to my students, so they know I'm coming to the issue of the power or the value or the benefit or advantage of disability disclosure. So here's this. After I disclosed my visual disability, the learner said, "Sir, you might as well use the larger font when you write on the board, so that when you stand at the back of the classroom, you are able to see what you have written. It is fine. As long as you are going to explain to us, then we are going to learn." And another example, I ended up telling the learners about my disability. Oh, and they responded positively. So, this even shows you the power and the value of disability disclosure. But we also do understand that disability is a confidential issue. It's the choice of the person whether they want to disclose or not. But we have a mandate, we have a responsibility, and we must be accountable to conscientize and educate our students on disability disclosure versus non-disclosure. So even when you disclose your disability, there is a balance of the power in the classroom between the learner and the student teacher with the disability. Again, it eliminates or reduces stigma production, and then positive outcomes are achieved in the classroom. And this leads to the expansion of the students' academic capabilities, and it also enhances their confidence. Everybody wins in the classroom, including the learners. And then I come down to learning communities, which is a theoretical construct developed by Professor Vincent Tinto. It's basically based on student development, student perseverance, student retention, and success outcome. So basically, learning communities, when it is, and I'm speaking in the context of higher education, it's when people with similar attributes or similar concerns come together in a safe space to establish open dialogue and open communication in and amongst the group members. They come with a sort of sameness so that everybody feels belong. So very often we use this here with our students with disabilities, where we create safe spaces using the learning community constructs, because it is in the safe spaces where students with disabilities comes together. They speak about disability disclosure and very often disability stigma and how it reduces them. They are free to speak in these spaces. It promotes their freedom, their agencies, their capabilities, and it strengthens their human development and capability expansion here in higher education. So again, I'm coming back to practice learning arrangements. Our first things first, the power of disability disclosure, and where you go ahead and you educate and you empower able-bodied people about disability by the person with the disability. Remember, the person with the disability is the expert on their own disability experience. Furthermore, it's very important to self-advocate on your disability, as with the first things first. It's about understanding and acceptance of your disability by the able-bodied population. And this all allows us to improve our levels of confidence, our self-esteem, and the collapse of power hierarchy, hence balancing the power between persons with disabilities and able-bodied persons. So, in conclusion, disability, stigma emerging from disability comes together as a human rights and a social justice issue, not only here in South Africa, but it is definitely a global complexity. And then we move on to education, awareness, and understanding is important. Because it is where we spread the word of disability and disability stigma and the richness of disability disclosure, learning communities as safe spaces. So yes, it's about open dialogue, the role of recovery, but most importantly, here in the space of higher education, and when we're doing the safe space work, it is about the student's voice that matters, because in this way we humanize this dialogue from the perspective of disability stigma. We humanize this dialogue in our efforts to dismantle stigma. We also offer individual counseling and support to our students and help them to create roadmaps in how they need to navigate disability stigma in the space of higher education and the Bachelor of Education program. And the whole world is screaming about the Sustainable Development Goals, the 2030 Agenda, and we pride ourselves in achieving or acknowledging Goal 4. And reducing or eradicating disability stigma contributes to quality education. Goal 10 will contribute to reducing inequities, and Goal 16, of course, will contribute to enhancing peace, justice, and strong institutions. And when we support these goals, we help to come closer to the promise of transformation in the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 agenda by ensuring that nobody is left behind. However, but in spite of the vast global media coverage on stigma as a mental health issue, discrimination, exclusion, I must add that there is a need for heightened scientific evidence and a robust higher education dialogue, inclusive policies, so that we can use this to inform our daily practice in our disability units with regards to disability stigma, because this will give higher education a clear direction of how we need to move in taking this issue of disability stigma and its impact and the complexities in our academic discipline. It'll help us to take it forward. I want to say thank you so much, and I hope this brought in some valuable thinking and dialogue on the issue of disability stigma as a barrier to a degree. Thank you very much. So with that being said, I know it was quite much, but it's just the way it's experienced, and it's a critical issue for us to create education, awareness, and capacity building. So without much ado, can I call upon Mrs. Gugulethu Ndabezeta to tell us something about mental health issues and the stigma associated with mental health. I had the great opportunity of meeting Mrs. Ndabezeta at a women's empowerment program, and she really took my breath away with the way she with the nature of the work that she does in the space of mental health, and she deserves this platform today. She is a South African therapist. She's a private social work. She's a private practitioner, and she strongly believes in reaching out to people and to assist them into bringing them to making a masterpiece version of themselves. And that is indeed so powerful. So without much more that I need to say, and which I can say, I want to hand you over to Mrs. Ndabazeta to educate us and conscientize us on stigma associated with mental health issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roche. Thank you for this opportunity. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. Today we are going to engage on a collective discussion of understanding mental health and mental illness, breaking stigmas and fostering a culture of compassion. This is a space where open minds and open hearts will come together, where we challenge preconceptions, stereotypes, and embrace the power of knowledge. We invite you to bring your curiosity, your stories, and your willingness to explore. This is a session, an opportunity for us to explore our perspective, learn from one another, and create a supportive community where everyone's voice matters. Let's look at dealing with stigma. We need to start somewhere. So why not with what we think we know? Stigma refers to a negative and unfair social attitude attached to a person or a group, which makes them shameful about their experience or condition. Mental health conditions carry a heavy burden of stigma in our society. It's as if society has whispered unkind rumors and false beliefs about mental health, creating an atmosphere of judgment and misunderstanding. This stigma carries barriers and making it difficult for individuals to acknowledge their struggles and seek help they deserve. It's like speaking in a room where silence is demanded, leaving them feeling isolated, ashamed, and afraid to remove our masks. Let us start with how do we differentiate between mental health and mental illness. Firstly, lack of knowledge. Many people find themselves in this situation lacking a comprehensive understanding of what mental health entails. It's like trying to solve a puzzle without knowing what the puzzle looks like or how they fit together. Without this knowledge, recognizing the signs and the symptoms of mental health struggles become a daunting task and making it harder to reach out for support. Secondly, subjectivity. Mental health is very personal. It's like a fingerprint. What might be a struggle for one person might not be a struggle for another person. This subjectivity makes it challenging to identify and compare our own mental health state with others, further complicating our understanding. Thirdly, denial. Denial, this can be a very powerful force, like an invisible barrier that prevents us from acknowledging our own struggles. Some individuals may minimize their experiences, believing that their struggles are not so important or seeking help is not necessary. Denial can lock us in a perpetual cycle of suffering, preventing us from taking the necessary steps towards healing. Let's start off with an observation. Who in this photo is suffering from a mental illness? Hopefully it will be obvious to most that we don't know. We can tell if someone is physically injured or sick, and by how the people look. Most people, they feel comfortable to share their or show their physical illness or injury. They can do that by sharing, expressing it to other people. But with mental illness, it is a silent or hidden suffering because people cannot tell who is struggling and do not show empathy or support openly. It is also important to note that here, that anyone can experience mental illness. Some people are more predisposed to it than others for various reasons, but it is possible for everyone to experience it, the same as most physical illnesses. Mental health related issues can be invisible to others from the outside for a variety of reasons. The symptoms may be internal. Mental health issues can manifest in ways that are not visible to others, e.g., anxiety and depression may cause a person to feel constantly worried or sad, but these feelings may not be apparent to others. People may hide their symptoms due to the stigma surrounding mental health issues. Some people may feel ashamed or embarrassed about their symptoms and hide them from others. And the symptoms may be subtle. Some symptoms of mental health issues, such as changes in sleep disturbances, or loss of appetite, may be subtle and therefore not easily noticeable to others. Mental health issues can be episodic. They can come and go, and the person may not display symptoms all the time. And this can make it difficult for others to recognize that there is a problem. People may try to cope privately. Some people may feel that they need to cope with their mental health issues on their own. Some may think that they are a burden to their family and they do not want to burden other people. Well, it is important to remember that just because someone may not display visible signs of a mental health issue does not mean they are not struggling. It is important that we approach others with empathy, understanding, and encourage them to seek help if it is needed. Looking at the myths around mental health. The myth number one, mental health problems don't affect me in my race or my gender and my family, etc. That is myth number one. Myth number two, children don't experience mental health problems. Myth number three, people with mental health problems are weird. They are violent and unpredictable. Then myth number four, People with mental illnesses cannot hold down a job. Yes, there's a myth. Mental health problems are rare. The fact is, mental health problems are actually quite common. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 4 people in the world will be affected by mental or neurological disorders at some point in their lives. Then mental health problems are a sign of weakness. The fact is, mental health problems are not a sign of weakness. They are a medical condition. They are medical conditions that can affect anyone, regardless of strength or character. Then people with mental health problems are violent and dangerous. The fact is, the vast majority of people with mental health problems, they're not violent or dangerous. In fact, people with mental health problems are more likely to be victims of violence than perpetrators. And then this one, mental health problems are caused by personal failings or a lack of willpower. The fact is, mental health problems are caused by a complex interplay of biological, psychological, and environmental factors that are not the result of personal failings or lack of willpower. Myth number 5. There is no hope for people with mental health problems. They never recover. These are some of the myths around mental health. Myth number 6. Therapy is a waste of time. Is a waste of time. Then myth number 7. Physical illness is worse than mental health. Myth number 8, my GP is the best person to treat mental health. These are some of the myths that are out there. And we know that they are not the truth. Mental health is a sign of weakness. The fact is, mental health problems are not a sign of weakness. They are medical conditions that anyone can go, of strength or character can go through. Then the mental health problems are caused by personal failings or lack of willpower. And they're caused by, it's not true, they're caused by a complex of interplay of biological, psychological, and environmental factors that and are not a result of personal failings or lack of willpower. Also, this one, mental health problems can be cured with willpower alone. No, mental health problems require proper treatment, which may include willpower therapy or combination of both. Willpower alone is not enough to treat a mental health problem. Thinking about stigma, can you think back to a time where you felt you were totally misunderstood? What did that feel like? Now let us consider what this has to do with mental illness. How can we go about challenging ourselves and our colleagues, tackle our own biases and assumptions about mental health, and even talking about mental health? Mental health stigma can have significant impact on the individual experiencing stigmatization. Stigma can create a culture of shame and fear around mental health, making it difficult for individuals to seek help when they need it. This can lead to feelings of isolation, hopelessness, and helplessness, and can prevent individuals from accessing the care and support they need to manage their mental health challenges. Also, stigmatization can also cause individuals to feel ashamed and to blame themselves for their mental health problems. This can lead to self-stigmatization, in which individuals internalize the negative attitudes and beliefs of society and view themselves as weak, flawed, or defective. Stigmatization can also have practical consequences such as discrimination in employment, housing, and healthcare. This can make it difficult for individuals to access the resources and support they need to manage their mental health conditions and to live a fulfilling life. Overall, mental health stigmas can have a negative impact on an individual's mental and physical well-being, their quality of life, and the care and support they need. It is important to address stigmas and promote mental health awareness, understanding of re-stigmatization on individuals experiencing mental health challenges. Dealing with stigma. What can we do to deal with the pressure of society? Knowing the facts about mental health, educating yourself or ourselves about mental health conditions, their prevalence, symptoms, and treatment can help dispel myths and misinformation. When you have an accurate information, you can confidently challenge stigma and promote understanding. Be an advocate. We actively advocate for mental health awareness and destigmatization in our communities, in our workplaces, in our social circles. Use your voice and platform to raise awareness, challenge discrimination, and advocate for policies and practices that support mental wellness. Educate others, share your knowledge and experiences with others to educate them about mental health. Encourage open dialogue and discussions on discrimination and harmful attitudes or behaviors, and advocate for empathy and understanding and acceptance. We need to speak about mental health in a positive way, using positive language, and framing when discussing mental health. Focus on strengths, recovery, resilience, rather than emphasizing deficits or limitations. We should highlight stories of hope, stories of healing, empowerment to inspire others. Also, we must acknowledging the real challenges of mental health illness without excluding. Acknowledge the real challenges and struggles faced by people going through mental health challenges, while also emphasizing their human rights, their humanity, dignity, and worth. Avoid excluding or stigmatizing individuals based on their mental health condition, and offer empathy, support, and inclusion instead. Don't let others create self-doubt or shame. Refuse to internalize or accept stigma from others. Don't let negative attitudes or judgments on mental health create self-doubt or shame about our own experiences. Remember that seeking help and support for mental health challenges is a strength, not a weakness, and the first step to recovery. Let us look at the mental health continuum. Mental health and mental illness. They are not a binary. What is a continuum? A continuum is a sequence in which the adjacent elements are not really different from one another, but the extremes are quite distinct from one another. So translated into mental health, it means that mental health and mental illness are really not that different at the perception level, but rather distinct at the extreme levels. What do you think of when you hear the word mental health? If you think of mental health and conditions such as anxiety, depression, bipolar, and OCD, you wouldn't be alone. All too often we frame mental health as negative and forget that health is more than just the absence of illness. We all have days when we feel better than others. And just like our physical health, we can all do things that make us mentally healthier. No one should leave it until they are ill or to start thinking about mental health. I want to introduce to you the mental health continuum as it helps us view mental health in a positive and highlight symptoms that we can all recognize and proactively improve. We think it's important to understand mental health as not just the absence of illness, but as a broad concept that applies to us all. Mental health is. It is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope well with normal daily stresses of life, and can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution in her own community. As you can see, can sometimes think that mental health and mental illness, they look like this. Sometimes we might mistakenly think that a person is either as mental health or mental illness. The notion of the two as a dichotomous or opposite is not true of our human experience. Think about it like this. When we talk about physical health, we don't say all people fall into one or two categories, sick or healthy. We know that some people are very sick, some people become but sick, some people are okay for now, but often get sick as they have a low immune system or they do not have a very healthy life. Some people are quite healthy most of the time, and some people are exceptionally fit and healthy, and they have a small probability of getting sick at any time soon. Mental health and mental illness are not an either or. There are 5 zones of the mental health continuum. The highest level of mental well-being in our continuum is excelling. Given the right conditions and a positive mindset, this is us functioning at our peak level. This can be at a time of great joy or fulfillment, such as the birth of a child or a major personal success. Another form of excelling is when we are performing to our fullest potential. This could apply to an interest such as music or art, but it also applies to work. The more often someone is in this state, the better their job outcome. So it's worth thinking about how people can be encouraged to get into the excelling zone and how they can stay there. This state of high performance has been described as flow. Then we look at the thriving mode. That is when this is a normal and a healthy state of mental health, indicated by light green zone, which we call it thriving. In this zone, you will feel fine, not necessarily, you'll feel fine. And basically, not necessarily not having worries, but basically calm and connect and content. Whatever worries or annoyances you face are coped with fairly well. They don't make you feel you cannot function normally with regards to basic behaviors like eating or sleeping. Your work pattern or social life are what it, your work pattern and social are still intact. Work depends on a lot of factors other than mental health. Then we get to the yellow zone, which is a surviving, which stands for an unsettled state of mind. Person can slip into surviving fairly easily. It's important to watch out for the signs and symptoms. The yellow zone is not a severe state of distress, but it can indicate problems that could get worse. So it requires action. So how does someone experience this zone? Worries start to prey on the mind than usual. Thoughts are more negative than usual. Appetite and sleep get affected. It will be harder for one to concentrate, maybe at work or in other areas on other tasks. In the yellow zone, you may just feel on edge without knowing why. Sometimes in the state, we try to identify a reason. This may be obvious, and may be obvious an argument with a loved one, a conflict with a colleague, but the cause is often difficult to understand. The good news is that with the right step, it can be relatively easy to pull yourself out of the yellow zone through relaxation techniques, positive and rational thinking as used in the cognitive behavior therapy, exercises, or just getting out of having fun also can help. If it's a conflict at work, a friendly, constructive conversation can fix it. On the downside, if steps are not taken, there's a danger of slipping into the orange zone. That is when you are struggling in the orange zone. In the orange zone, you are significantly troubled. You may feel anxiety, so much anxiety that life may become a misery. Mood may be so low that you feel as if it's hard to do anything well. Concentration is poor and affected, and work suffers. In this state, you may feel pain, both emotionally and physically, or you may feel numbed and empty. Thoughts can be negative. For example, ideas of worthlessness, that others dislike us, basic habits can be affected, may have little appetite or sex drive or sleep poorly. Hope is not lost though. We remember how we have felt better in the past and we could feel better now. In the orange zone, it is important that we take steps to pull yourself out of it. Employees can even talk to their managers about difficulties with working, and managers should be able to spot signs of their state and talk to employees quickly. Employees may need time off or support from an EAP or a professional such as a GP or a psychologist. Then there is this last stage where we are in crisis. Unfortunately, there's a state of mental health beyond struggling. People with diagnosed mental health condition may have found themselves in this zone in the past. They're in the crisis, which led to their diagnosis and treatment. But anyone can fall into this state given the right circumstances. In crisis means a person is in a state of great suffering and needs immediate help. Their emotional pain may be unbearable, that they want to take their own life. Symptoms include severe anxiety or depression, or even both at the same time. There will be great difficulty in performing work or other ordinary daily tasks, such as personal hygiene, eating, and sleeping. They may just stay in bed the whole day and avoid all social contact. It's likely that they stay off work sick. If they are ashamed of their condition, which is sadly often the case, they may give some other reason for their absence. It is possible, nonetheless, that a person may enter this state while at work or come in through habit or a sense of duty. They will get much done, however. However, a manager will need to approach them and have all important chat about their well-being. But the manager should bear in mind that having a normal conversation may be impossible for an employee or a person in the red zone. They will definitely need professional help. Let us look at the common categories of mental illness. There are some of the most, which are mood disorders. Some of the more common ones are major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, seasonal affective disorder. And on the anxiety disorder, that is what is feeling anxiousness. We've got generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and social anxiety disorder. Let us look what is the mood disorder. It's when your emotional state or your mood is just distorted or maladaptive, not helpful to your circumstances, and generally affects your functioning in the ways that make it hard for you to maintain good health. Imagine that your mood is like weather, just like how the weather changes from day to day. Your mood can change too. Sometimes you might feel happy and sunny, like a bright day with blue skies. Other times you might feel sad, like a rainy or cloudy day. But for some people, their mood gets stuck in one type of weather for a very long time. This is what we call a mood disorder. For example, depression is like being stuck in a long period of rainy or cloudy weather where everything feels gray and heavy. On the other hand, bipolar disorder is like having extreme weather changes, going from a very long period of dark clouds to a sudden burst of sunshine and energy, like a thunderstorm followed by a rainbow. Just like how the weather can affect your daily activities and plans, mood disorders can also impact on your life in many ways. They can affect your ability to enjoy things, your energy levels, and your relationship with others. But the good news is that there are treatment and support available to help you manage your mood disorder and improve your overall well-being. And some of the more common disorders include major depressive disorder. We commonly use the term depression for this, and it is characterized by a prolonged period of feeling very low, feeling agitated and unhappy with the world and others and with ourselves. Yes.
I'm so sorry. I will have to interject. Can I give you 1 minute to round up? Because we already passed the 3:30 mark. It's so interesting, especially the one about the bipolar. But can I just give you 1 minute to round up, please? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So to wrap up, how do we seek treatment? We need to think of therapy as a journey, just like any journey. It can have its own ups and downs and turns and unexpected obstacles, but with the right tools and guidance, you can navigate the path to reach your destination. A therapist is like someone who will guide you, help you along the way, and can provide you with a map to help you navigate your journey, can offer you support and guidance when you encounter obstacles. They can also help you gain new insights and perspectives that can help you make better decisions and move forward in a positive direction. Therapy can be challenging at times, just like a journey path, just like how a journey can be rewarding and life-changing. Therapy can also be transformative. It can be a transformative experience that helps you to overcome your difficulties and improve your overall well-being. So it is important that we learn, we as the community, we learn to be kind to people who are struggling with mental health issues, learn to listen and not judge them, learn but offer support and be empathetic to them. That would be the end, Dr. Roche, for me.
Hi, Gugu. Thank you for that lovely presentation. I'm sure we
Roche,
could.
may I interject? Gugu, if you could please stop sharing your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela.
Sorry.
Roche, you may go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Pamela. Once again, thank you, Gugu. Our unit will still be calling upon you. I think your knowledge in the field of stigma associated with the mental health is indeed absolutely impressive. I'm just going to take a very few minutes, not to round up on the presentation, but as the presentations went along, I just picked up on a few points with regard to interventions. I think that is most important. And perhaps we can hold ourselves accountable to World Mental Health Day in at least putting one intervention in place, or in at least conscientizing somebody on one of the interventions, because that is certainly my mandate to in respect of world or international mental health month. So basically, I think what came up is that you include persons with disabilities experiencing stigma, as they are the experts, and they have first-hand knowledge and experiences about their stigma experiences. So include them in open dialogues and discussion. As Gugu rightfully pointed out, we shouldn't see therapy as something that's negative or not good, but rather we should embrace therapy in a positive way to create a kind of a transformation, a change, to address and redress certain issues or misconceptions that we may have as far as mental health stigma is concerned. The part that Gugu just mentioned, I thought is very powerful. You know, the issue of just be kind, be empathetic, have a non-judgmental attitude, learn to listen, be genuine. Don't wear a mask when you come in the space of people experiencing stigma. Be there in your authentic self and listen. And that is very, very important. We also have to advocate for policy change and redress, and also the possibilities for the inclusion of mental health specific policies and reform. And I think also issues with regard to shame were actually brought to the surface, and that is another painful construct in which we have to deal with, and we have to address it issues relevant to shame. But also what came out very clearly is that shame is reduced when narratives are told. When your story is told, you are reducing the shame. And that is so valuable. It is so powerful. Encourage people to speak out about how they feel about their stigmas. And, we must also have conversation. We must humanize the issue of stigma. And we must also be aware of our language. We must choose our words very carefully, because in those words, and if we don't think about the language we're going to use, it is deeply discrediting, and it has connotations for labeling, negative stereotypes, and the way you are treated by people as well. We must also step into massive education, awareness, and advocacy programs relevant to downplaying stigma. What gives rise to stigma? Because as long as we don't know what's the enabler to stigma, it's going to be very hard to reduce it, manage it, or to eliminate it. Because without power hierarchies, without negative attitudes, without stereotyping and labeling, there won't be stigma. So we need to learn to know how to do that in an effort to completely eliminate stigma. Also, when we're having these conversations, we must include every voice matters, include everybody in these conversations, because you'll never know who's the expert on their stigma experience. Importantly, become a stigma champion wherever you work. Important, because in that way you can really spread the word of stigma. Issues of disability disclosure, we can't force people to disclose. It's their agency, it's their choice, but we can advise and counsel people on the rich potential in disability disclosure. Safe space conversations, that's also very important, where people get to tell their stories together and come up with interventions together. Lastly, and if we're really serious about stigma and the harmful effects of stigma, we need to become the champions first. We need to be focused. We need to have a positive attitude, so that when we support people authentically, because our concern is on well-being, flourishing, human well-being, human development, and enhancing the human capabilities of the people that we serve. I think it's a very important personal mandate to have. I'm so sorry, we have really gone over time. If you have any questions, I'm sure you can pop them by with me, and we will make every effort to get some response to you. But with that being said, I know stigma is a hard topic. It draws out your energy with it, when you have to deal with it, and when you have to talk about it. It is of your concern, and then one life, and in the life of, we all have a great one on this earth. So thank you very much for staying the course with us. Importantly, I want to thank our presenters who are come with so much of rich knowledge on stigma and the management of stigma. I want to thank the University of KwaZulu-Natal personally for giving me the opportunity to understand, to be in the space to understand stigma, production, reproduction, and everything else that goes through it, with it. Even with corporate relations, Pamela, Kurt,